Day for the most significant law to be passed since then, since the last 30 years.
Restrictions that New York passed on their statute about where you can have guns, places that don't have a sign.
No more hopes and prayers, thoughts and prayers. A vote is what we need.
Crime for someone who's already been convicted of a felony to possess any firearm.
And that's why gun owners wanted the Supreme Court to put the statute on hold. They have now said no.
Lock and load. Supreme Court fires unanimous decision on concealed carry laws, igniting controversy and shaping the future of firearms regulation. Background: the legal saga of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin revolves around the intricate landscape of concealed carry permitting laws in New York State. At the heart of this case lies the state's requirement that residents obtain a permit to carry firearms in public, a regulation that has sparked contentious debates and ignited legal battles. This case, with its origins in the quest for concealed carry permits, delves into the fundamental question of what constitutes a proper cause for carrying a firearm in public. New York State has long adhered to a stringent approach to concealed carry permits. Residents seeking such permits are mandated to demonstrate a legitimate and compelling reason, surpassing the mere threshold of personal preference. The concept of a proper cause demands that applicants establish a special need for carrying a firearm in public, a need that outweighs general concerns. Two individuals embarked on this regulatory journey, each seeking permission to carry concealed firearms for distinct reasons. One applicant argued that the surge of robberies in his neighborhood warranted the need for self-protection. The other applicant's rationale was centered on the broader purpose of self-defense. However, both faced denial of their permit applications, prompting them to rally under the banner of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association and challenge the state's regulation. The pivotal juncture arrived as the case ascended through the legal hierarchy, culminating in a profound showdown at the Supreme Court of the United States. This legal battle encapsulates the broader debate surrounding the Second Amendment, individual rights, and the state's prerogative to regulate firearms for public safety.
It was challenged by gun owners. Now the U.S. Supreme Court is allowing New York to enforce this gun control law.
Yesterday, I spoke about the Supreme Court's shocking decision.
That is looking out and reading all the cases decided by the United States Court of Appeals and state Supreme Courts.
The essence of the case centers on the delicate balance between the individual's right to bear arms and the state's authority to safeguard its populace. The differing perspectives on what qualifies as a proper cause echo the nuanced complexities of gun regulations in a society grappling with the need to ensure public safety while respecting individual freedoms. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin represents a microcosm of the broader discourse that resonates across the nation, as the contours of the Second Amendment are tested against evolving notions of public welfare and personal rights. The Supreme Court's engagement in this case holds the potential to redefine the parameters of concealed carry permitting laws, with implications that could reverberate far beyond the borders of New York State. As the legal battle unfolds, it underscores the enduring importance of striking a judicious balance between individual liberties and collective security within the realm of firearms regulation. Concealed carry constitutional clash. The recent tragic event in Allen, Texas, where a gunman opened fire at an outdoor shopping mall, resulted in the loss of 8 lives, including 3 children, has once again highlighted the urgent need for discussions on gun control. The devastating bloodshed has sparked renewed efforts to tighten restriction on firearms. However, as the nation grapples with the aftermath of this incident, a parallel and equally significant conversation is taking place in the legal realm. While the public outcry for stricter gun regulation gains momentum, a series of court battles are simultaneously unfolding. These legal debates are centered around a fundamental question: where does the constitutional right to bear arms intersect with the government's authority to impose control on firearms ownership? The tension between individual rights and public safety is at the heart of this ongoing legal struggle. As discussions continue, a critical Supreme Court decision from last June looms large in the backdrop. This decision, which offered a broad interpretation of the Second Amendment of the Constitution, has heightened the intensity of these debates. The ruling has led to what some describe as an explosion in court challenges, significantly impacting the dynamics of the pro-gun movement. Advocates for stricter gun laws, like Nick Suplina from Everytown for Gun Safety, argue that this decision has emboldened those on the pro-gun side to contest nearly all aspects of gun safety regulations on the grounds of unconstitutionality. The implication of these court battles are far-reaching and extend beyond the immediate concerns of gun ownership. The outcome of these legal disputes could shape the trajectory of gun control for years to come, influencing not only the current generation, but also those that follow. This juncture is pivotal, as the interpretation of the Second Amendment may lead to challenges against crucial life-saving gun laws, creating a ripple effect across the nation's legal framework.
Strict limits on guns outside of a home. Two Supreme Court justices say the New York law presents some serious questions.
Striking down Roe v. Wade. We've had a lot of discussion about that in our whole household.
To try to identify those cases that the Supreme Court might be interested in taking up and reviewing.
The foundation for this legal flux was laid by the Supreme Court's ruling in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin, which drew from the precedent set by District of Columbia v. Heller in 2008. This precedent clarified that the right to bear arms is not solely connected to militia service, separating the two concepts enshrined in the Second Amendment. The case in question directly challenged a New York law requiring gun owners to demonstrate a special need for carrying a firearm in public. The subsequent ruling declared this law unconstitutional, emphasizing that the right to bear arms is not confined to one's home. At the heart of this legal evolution is the interpretation of the Second Amendment's parameters. Conservative Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, in the majority opinion, introduced a twofold test for new gun restrictions. First, the weapon under scrutiny must align with the Second Amendment scope. Second, any government-imposed limitations on the right to bear arms must be rooted in historical traditions of firearm regulations. However, this second requirement has proven contentious and disruptive to the implementation of effective gun control measures. The delicate balance between preserving constitutional rights and ensuring public safety has triggered debates on the interpretation of historical precedent. Overall, the recent tragic mass-laying incident has ignited both public and legal conversations about gun control. The Supreme Court's unanimous decision has injected new momentum into the debate, resulting in a surge of legal challenges and discussions on the extent of constitutional rights in the realm of firearm ownership. As court battles unfold, the nation stands at a crossroad, where the interpretation of the Second Amendment could shape the landscape of gun control for generations, with potential far-reaching consequences on state and federal legislations related to firearm ownership and restrictions. Supreme Court ruling reshapes. A recent groundbreaking Supreme Court ruling has led to a significant transformation in firearms regulation, specifically focusing on concealed carry legislation. The court invalidated a state law in a monumental verdict, reshaping the landscape of firearm limitations. Preceding this ruling was a regulation that prohibited non-residents from carrying concealed weapons within its jurisdiction. The ramifications of this decision are profound, potentially sparking a domino effect that could ultimately culminate in the establishment of concealed carry reciprocity across the nation. At the epicenter of this legal evolution lies a Massachusetts District Court case that has captured the attention of legal experts and advocates for gun rights alike. This case stands out as one of the earliest instances where a court leveraged the precedent set by the Supreme Court's decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. In the 6-3 Bruin ruling, the court laid the groundwork by establishing a precedent that could be leveraged to challenge statutory restrictions on non-resident firearm ownership. The central figure in the current case is an individual hailing from New Hampshire, holding a valid concealed carry permit in his home state. However, his journey through Massachusetts proved to be problematic when he was pulled over on suspicion of DUI and a concealed firearm was discovered in his possession. According to Massachusetts law, non-residents are prohibited from carrying concealed weapons unless they obtain a specific concealed carry permit for non-residents. The crux of the case revolves around the constitutional validity of Massachusetts' requirement for non-residents to secure an additional concealed carry permit. The plaintiff, Dean Donald, argues that his existing license from New Hampshire should be recognized under the protection of the Second Amendment, thereby allowing him to carry within Massachusetts without the need for an additional state-issued permit.
Those laws will still be in effect until first the Court of Appeals hears it in New York.
And would like the government to transfer those firearms, which he doesn't possess himself.
The families who, in fact, were victimized by the gun shooting that we've seen.
And then ultimately, if the Supreme Court takes the case, the Supreme Court hears it in Washington.
In a resounding conclusion, the district court sided with Dean Donald's contentions, ruling that Massachusetts could not enforce the necessity of a concealed carry permit for non-residents against him. Citing the precedent set by the Bruin decision, the court found that the state's law encroached upon the individual's Second Amendment's right and, as such, could not be applied to him. This ruling carries profound implications not only for Dean Donald, but also for the broader discourse on Second Amendment rights and concealed carry regulations. It marks the inaugural step towards a potential series of challenges to state restrictions, possibly paving the way for a nationwide reciprocity concerning concealed carry licenses. The echoes of this case are likely to reverberate in future court battles and discussions surrounding gun control, underscoring the intricate interplay between state laws and federal constitutional principles. Historical analogies redefining. The recent Supreme Court decision on concealed carry laws has triggered a meticulous re-examination of historical traditions, calling for a fresh understanding of the notion of historical tradition as it pertains to the Second Amendment and modern-day gun regulations. In a groundbreaking ruling, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thompson provided critical insight into the interpretation of this term, prompting legal scholars and advocates alike to delve into centuries-old legal precedents to find analogous measures that once regulated weaponry. Justice Thomas's perspective hinges on a clear historical context, dating back to the time when the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791, and even when the 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868. These amendments laid the groundwork for understanding the scope of federal versus state laws. Notably, the 14th Amendment stipulates that state laws cannot supersede federal laws, establishing a legal framework that forms an integral part of the modern debate on firearms. The intricacies of Justice Thomas's interpretation go beyond the mere duplication of historical regulations. While modern gun restrictions aren't required to have a direct historical counterpart, they must be demonstrated to be analogous to past regulations. Justice Thomas did not explicitly specify the precise time frame from which this analogy should be drawn, leaving legal experts to sift through legal history in search of comparable measures that historically restricted weaponry. This quest has led to a fascinating journey through centuries-old US and English law, as lawyers and scholars delve into the past to uncover regulations that mirror contemporary efforts to control firearms. In some instances, advocates for gun control have pointed to ban on unconventional weapons, like billy clubs, while others have turned to historical examples of laws that targeted specific groups deemed dangerous, including free black individuals, indigenous communities, and Catholics. One critical aspect that surfaced from Justice Thomas's interpretation is the recognition that the historical regulations under scrutiny must date back to the late 1700s or perhaps the 1800s. This raises a unique challenge in reconciling regulations from an era vastly different from the modern day, characterized by distinct problems and markedly dissimilar technological advancements. Eric Rubin, an assistant professor at Southern Methodist University's Dedman School of Law, encapsulates the complexities of this endeavor, highlighting that the historical regulations that now need to be presented to justify the constitutionality of modern gun laws are not those from a mere century ago. Instead, they need to be traced back to an era where societal contexts, challenges, and technological landscape were remarkably divergent. The implications of this ruling reverberate through legal circles, government bodies, and advocacy groups. The requirement to establish an analogy between past and present gun regulations challenges both lawmakers and courts, striving to bridge the gap between historical regulations and contemporary concerns of a formidable task. one that necessitates a creative and nuanced approach. This process demands the careful navigation of a legal landscape that juxtaposes the intentions of centuries-old laws with the pressing needs of today's society. The ruling not only shapes the current discourse on firearms, but also extends its influence to broader discussions surrounding the interpretation of constitutional rights in an evolving world. The quest for historical analogies exemplifies the dynamic nature of legal interpretation, where principles enshrined in centuries-old documents are brought to life and reinterpreted in the context of contemporary challenges. In conclusion, the Supreme Court's recent ruling has illuminated the concept of historical tradition in the realm of gun regulations, mandating a deeper exploration of regulations from the late 1700s and 1800s to serve as analogies for modern gun laws. This interpretive journey has propelled legal professionals into the annals of history, as they unearth past regulations to draw parallels to present concerns. The process is intricate, demanding a delicate balance between historical context and present realities, ultimately shaping the trajectory of the ongoing debate on gun control and constitutional rights. Dean Donald case. A recent landmark decision handed down by the Lowell District Court in Massachusetts has the potential to reshape the landscape of concealed carry laws, potentially paving the way for nationwide reciprocity. Dean Donald, the defendant in this case, stands accused of violating Massachusetts law by carrying a firearm without the requisite permit. His legal challenge rests on three primary objections: a facial challenge arguing the unconstitutionality of the law itself, an as-applied challenge asserting its illegality as applied to his circumstances, and a claim that the law breaches the prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. At the heart of this case lies the reverberations of the Supreme Court's recent rulings in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin. This ruling has fundamentally shifted the terrain of Second Amendment interpretation, altering the dynamics of challenges to gun legislation's legality. The Lowell District Court recognizes the Bruin's decision's pivotal role in not only establishing a nexus between the Second Amendment and contemporary gun control laws, but also in creating a framework to evaluate their constitutionality. Central to the case's implication is the question of how the Bruin's decision influences the extent of an individual's right to carry firearms across state lines. The case at hand delves into a scenario where a law-abiding citizen from New Hampshire exercises his Second Amendment rights while traveling to Massachusetts. To adjudicate such situations, the courts must employ the two-step analytical approach introduced in Bruin. Initially, the judges ascertain whether the individual's action align with the literal language of the Second Amendment. Should this be the case, any additional government-imposed restrictions must then be justified within the context of the nation's historical tradition of regulating weaponry.
Saying you can bring a gun in here, you can't go into with a gun.
Mr. Henderson turned over his firearms to the FBI before he was convicted.
And that's why gun owners wanted the Supreme Court to put the statute on hold. They have now said no.
This morning, though, we're here on a critical issue, gun violence.
Dean Donald's predicament is rooted in his status as a New Hampshire resident with a valid concealed carry permit issued by his home state. Conversely, Massachusetts law dictates that non-residents must secure a distinct concealed carry license. Donald's contention is that when applied to him, the Massachusetts statute infringes upon his constitutional rights. This legal battle not only probes the boundaries of Second Amendment protections, but also delves into the implications of varying state-level gun laws. However, the ramifications of the Dean Donald case transcends its specific circumstances. Drawing upon the Bruin precedent, the court challenges the prevailing landscape of state-specific concealed carry regulations, potentially signaling the commencement of a wave of judicial challenges against such laws. This pivotal case served as a catalyst for advocating a pathway to national concealed carry reciprocity. Such a paradigm shift could simplify regulations for those seeking to carry concealed firearms across state boundaries, harmonizing the divergent laws that currently exist. In essence, the Lowell District Court's decision in the Dean Donald case has marked a pivotal juncture in the ongoing discourse surrounding Second Amendment rights and concealed carry regulations. By invoking the Bruin case, the court not only questions the status quo of state-specific legislations, but also underscores the importance of comprehending constitutional rights within a dynamic legal milieu. This decision is poised to influence future legal disputes and policy discussions, with a spotlight on the potential realization of national concealed carry reciprocity. Aftermath of Bruin ruling. The aftermath of the Supreme Court's Bruin ruling has given rise to unforeseen consequences, shaping legal battles and stirring debates surrounding the delicate balance between gun rights and public safety. As the courts grapple with the interpretation of historical tradition in the context of the Second Amendment, a wave of challenges to existing gun restrictions has emerged, igniting a fierce dialogue that transcends state boundaries. In the immediate 8 months following the landmark Bruin decision, an analysis conducted by Jacob Charles, an associate professor at Pepperdine Caruso School of Law, unveiled a starting trend. A total of 212 claims challenging pre-existing gun restrictions, all anchored in the Bruin ruling, were adjudicated in courts across the United States. Among these claims, at least 31 received a favorable verdict, effectively challenging a diverse array of regulations such as licensing requirements for gun carry, bans on assault weapons, and the prohibition of untraceable ghost guns. The scope of the impact becomes evident through recent instances where pro-gun groups strategically invoked a Bruin ruling. In an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, these groups sought to halt Illinois' newly enacted ban on assault-style firearms and large-capacity magazines. Their contention rested on the assertion that no historical analog exists for such a ban, positioning the Bruin precedent as the pivotal instrument in their argument. However, the case's outcome is far from predictable, with its ramifications potentially shaping the trajectory of bans on assault-style firearms across the nation. The legal terrain further amplifies its complexity with the controversial ruling from the Fifth Circuit District Court. This ruling struck down a federal law that prohibited individuals accused of domestic misuse, who were subject to protective orders, from possessing firearms. This particular judgment triggered a clash within the legal community, prompting the Biden administration to petition the Supreme Court for its intervention. This decision contradicts several other rulings, casting uncertainty over its validity and underscoring the polarizing nature of the debate surrounding gun rights. Amidst the legal tug-of-war, a vulnerable group remains at the crossroads of these battles. Surviving of domestic misuse. Mariam Durrani, the Vice President of Policy at the National Domestic Violence Hotline, accentuates the dire implications of these legal dynamics on survivors. In cases where protective orders have been granted, the existing ambiguity poses a grave risk. In states like Mississippi, despite receiving protective orders, individuals accused of domestic misuse can legally retain their firearms, potentially endangering the lives of survivors. This unsettling environment exacerbates an already precarious situation for domestic misuse survivors. Leaving an offensive relationship or taking steps to do so is often the most dangerous juncture, a time when the risk of homicide significantly escalates. The lack of clarity in firearms possession only adds to their vulnerability, creating a distressing scenario where legal ambiguities intersect with personal safety. Stark statistics illuminate the urgency of addressing this issue. Data from the National Domestic Violence Hotline reveals a startling 56.6%.
You know who cannot afford to wait? The single mom looking to protect herself and her children from a violent ex who has just been released from jail.
It funds crisis intervention, including red flag laws. It keeps guns out of the hands of people who are a danger to themselves.
About 3% of the sales. But we are talking about the 100% of a life being snuffed out.
Who needs to register as a federally licensed gun dealer and run background checks before selling a single weapon?
Increase in calls mentioning firearms within the states encompassed by the Fifth Circuit Court, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, during a specific time frame, juxtaposed against the same period the previous year. Although correlation does not guarantee causation, the statistics hint at an unsettling trend that warrants attention and concern. Furthermore, domestic misuse demonstrates a troubling link to mass layings, underlining its disproportionate role in such incidents. A study conducted in 2021 unveiled that nearly 60% of mass layings with 4 or more fatalities between 2014 and 2019 were rooted in domestic violence. This connection underscores the gravity of the issue, transcending individual cases and reflecting a broader societal challenge. In conclusion, the unintended consequences of the Bruin ruling resonates far beyond the courtroom walls. The surge in challenges to existing gun restrictions echoes the complexities of interpreting historical traditions within the context of modern firearm regulations. While pro-gun groups seize upon the ruling to push for their agenda, survivors of domestic misuse remain trapped within a legal gray area, exposing them to potential harm. The ongoing debate around gun rights and restrictions must navigate the treacherous terrain of personal safety and constitutional interpretation, ensuring that the aftermath of legal decision aligns with the broader objective of safeguarding lives and public welfare. Deciphering the aftermath. The reverberations of the Supreme Court's Bruin ruling have echoed through the legal landscape, creating a chorus of discord and uncertainty. In the wake of this landmark decision, the clash of interpretations has given rise to a tangle of conflicting rulings and lingering questions. As courts grapple with the implications of the Bruin precedent, experts emphasize the imperative need for clarity and the potential downstream consequences that loom large over the domain of gun control measures. Jacob Charles, an associate professor at Pepperdine Caruso School of Law, characterizes the post-Bruin judicial climate as a scene of discord. Divergent rulings and contradictory interpretations have created a complex tapestry that weaves through federal courts across the nation. One of the central contentions of this chaos pertains to the domestic violence restriction, triggering a cascade of conflicting decisions that touch upon various aspects of gun control measures. Among the contested issues are age limits for gun carry, the prohibition of firearms possession for individuals under federal indictment, restrictions on high-capacity magazines, and measures to curtail the possession of firearms with altered serial numbers. These disagreements have accentuated the pressing need for a cohesive and comprehensive understanding of the Bruin's ruling ramification. However, the path towards clarity remains elusive, leaving the legal landscape veiled in uncertainty. Eric Rubin, a law professor of Southern Methodist University, underscores the urgency of resolving these discordant interpretations. He acknowledges the necessity for further guidance from the Supreme Court to illuminate the full spectrum of the Bruin's ruling's implications. In the interim, Rubin raises concern about the potential downstream consequences of this uncertainty. The specter of inconsistent rulings may cast a shadow over legislative endeavors, deterring lawmakers from pursuing gun control restrictions that they fear could be swiftly dismantled by conflicting interpretations. The ripple effect of the Bruin rulings extend to legislators as well. Despite the prevailing ambiguity, many lawmakers have not been paralyzed by inaction. They continue to forge ahead with ambitious reforms in numerous states. Nick Suplina, Senior Vice President of Law and Policy at Everytown for Gun Safety, asserts that the Bruin ruling has not stifled the momentum for change. He believes that a myriad of gun restrictions will endure, even in the aftermath of the ruling. Suplina and his colleagues maintain confidence that the Supreme Court did not intend to unleash an unbounded interpretation of the Second Amendment through the Bruin case. They express hope that the court will seize the opportunity to clarify its stance, providing definitive guidance to lower court judges nationwide. The aspiration is to rein in the vagaries of interpretation and to ensure that the nuances of the Second Amendment are both understood and applied judiciously. Doug Litter, Chief Legal Officer at the gun control advocacy group Brady, shares this optimism. Litter views the present moment as the crucial juncture for governments to institute constitutional and life-saving gun laws that align with the contours drawn by the Supreme Court's decision in Heller and Bruin. The convergence of legal clarity and meaningful action is deemed imperative as lives teeter on the balance of policy and regulation. In conclusion, the post-Bruin landscape remains fraught with legal battles, contradictions, and aspirations for a more comprehensible future. The clash of interpretations has cast a cloud of uncertainty, exacerbating the struggle for consensus within the realm of gun control measures. Despite these challenges, proponents of gun regulations persist in their endeavors, driven by the hope of finding solace in a cohesive legal framework that aligns with historical tradition and the broader goal of safeguarding lives. This journey toward clarity is ongoing, and the outcome of these efforts hold the potential to reshape the contours of gun control legislation for generations to come. Dissenting voices. The recent Supreme Court decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin which eliminated concealed carry laws, has set the stage for a profound exchange of opinions within the court. These dissenting voices represent the nuanced intricacies surrounding the intersection of firearm regulation, individual rights, and the imperative of public safety. As the legal landscape grapples with the implications of this landmark decision, the divergent perspectives of the dissenting justices offer a comprehensive view of the complexities involved. At the heart of the dissenting opinions lies a robust emphasis on the ramifications for public health and safety. The justices who dissented assert that the discourse around firearms cannot be disentangled from the broader context of gun violence's societal impact. This perspective emphasizes the crucial consideration of public health evidence and data when evaluating the consequences of dismantling concealed carry laws. The majority opinion, according to these dissenting voices, overlooks this pivotal aspect, raising concerns about an incomplete assessment of the potential fallout of such a decision. Justice Alito's concurring opinion serves as a prominent example of skepticism towards public health evidence. His stance dismisses carry law in light of the Buffalo shooting epitomizes this dismissive approach. This sentiment is mirrored in other concurring opinions as well, collectively underscoring a tendency to understate the role of public health evidence. The dissenting voices, on the other hand, assert the intrinsic link between firearms regulation and public health outcomes. They contend that the court must not overlook evidence-backed laws that can effectively mitigate gun violence. By doing so, the dissenters underscore the role of judicial review in safeguarding public safety while respecting constitutionally enshrined rights. A recurring theme within the dissenting opinion centers on the shift away from a traditionally recognized approach to judicial restraint. This doctrine dictates the courts should exercise caution in striking down laws that were enacted democratically to achieve significant objectives. The abolition of concealed carry laws, in the eyes of the dissenters, signifies a departure from this established tradition, prompting questions about the potential assertiveness of striking down laws that emerged through democratic processes. Nevertheless, the dissenting voices acknowledge that the majority opinion invokes the exceptional significance of the Second Amendment as justification for not deferring to legislative decisions. Justice Thomas, writing for the majority, alludes to the idea that certain individuals' rights are too momentous to be subject to legislative deference. However, this justification's clarity remains a subject of scrutiny within the dissenting camp, as they question the rationale behind the departure from well-established principles of judicial review.
Today, we say more than enough. We say more than enough.
No Democrat has ever tried to get anybody's guns. I mean, that's just a lie that they tell, and y'all ought to stop perpetuating their lie.
Time when it seems impossible to get anything done in Washington, we are doing something consequential.
To pass legislation that will do nothing to make Americans safer, but target our Second Amendment and our, sacred God-given liberties.
The nuanced interplay between law, individual rights, and public health underscores the deeper repercussions of the decision. From a public health perspective, the elimination of concealed carry laws sparks pertinent questions. The removal of requirements for demonstrating proper cause and obtaining permits could lead to more individuals carrying firearms without undergoing rigorous background checks. This newfound freedom to carry across state lines introduces the challenge of tracking and regulating armed individuals, potentially compromising public safety. The dissenting opinions portend a broader impact on the public health and safety landscape. The expansion of the Second Amendment scope beyond the home and the formulation of a new test for evaluating its restrictions could trigger an upsurge in litigation. This surge may challenge gun laws that are backed by robust evidence, such as permit-to-purchase laws, extreme risk protection order laws, safe storage laws, and minimum age laws. The dissenting voices signal an era of increased scrutiny on gun laws, presenting the potential for substantial implications for public health and safety. In the wake of the concealed carry ruling, the tensions between individual rights, public safety imperatives, and public health considerations are palpable. The divergent voices within the court reflect the intricate nature of constitutional interpretation, offering insights into the broader ramifications of this momentous decision. As the legal landscape adapts to the consequences of the ruling, the ongoing discourse will revolve around achieving a harmonious equilibrium between Second Amendment rights and the exigencies of public health and safety. The complexities of this discussion are a testament to the delicate balance that must be struck in shaping the future trajectory of firearms regulations in the United States. New York's response to Bruen. In the aftermath of the groundbreaking Supreme Court decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen, New York State took swift and significant action to address the potential ramifications of the ruling. Governor Kathy Hochul's proactive approach led to the convening of an extraordinary session of the Senate and Assembly on July 1, 2022, resulting in the signing of the Concealed Carry Improvement Act into law. New York's response to the Bruen decision marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing discourse surrounding firearms regulation and public safety. This comprehensive legislative package, which comes into effect on September 1, 2022, introduces a range of measures aimed at balancing Second Amendment rights with the imperative of safeguarding the well-being of the public. The Concealed Carry Improvement Act represents a proactive and multifaceted approach to addressing the concerns arising from the Bruen decision. A central focus of the legislation is a delineation of sensitive locations where the carrying of firearms in public is prohibited. This nuanced provision, captured in the new Penal Law 265.01-E, designates a diverse array of places where individuals cannot carry firearms, emphasizing the importance of maintaining safety in areas with high foot traffic and vulnerable populations.
As a condition of gaining bail before trial, the government has kept possession of the firearms ever since then.
You know, I'm about to sign into law bipartisan gun safety legislation.
Notable among the listed locations are places of worship, educational institutions, courthouses, government buildings, public transportation, health and medical facilities, shelters, daycare facilities, and public gatherings like demonstrations and rallies. This delineation aims to strike a balance between individual rights and public safety considerations, reflecting New York's commitment to preserving the well-being of its citizens. The legislation takes into account privately owned property and premises, recognizing the significance of property owners' autonomy in determining firearm regulations within their spaces. In the context of office buildings and similar locations, the law establishes a default provision that restricts the carrying of firearms unless the property owner or lessee explicitly permits it through conspicuous signage. This approach acknowledges the varying preferences of property owners while ensuring that firearm regulations are clear and accessible to those entering their premises. Concealed carry permit requirements. New York's response to Bruen's decision involves an enhancement of concealed carry permit requirements to bolster accountability and safety. These amendments aim to establish a rigorous framework that prioritizes both firearm owner responsibility and public well-being. The expansion of permit requirements to include 4 character references, firearm safety training courses, live fire testing, in-person interviews, and social media history from the past 3 years underscores the commitment to thorough vetting. By demanding a comprehensive assessment of applicants, New York seeks to ensure that concealed carry permits are granted only to individuals who have demonstrated a commitment to responsible firearm ownership. The legislative response to the Bruen decision introduces stricter disqualifications for obtaining a concealed carry permit. Individuals who documented instances of violent behavior, certain misdemeanor convictions, alcohol-related offenses, recent drug-related treatment, and recent involuntary commitment to mental health facilities are now excluded from obtaining permits. Additionally, the legislation mandates that licenses be recertified or renewed every 3 years, coupled with rigorous background checks conducted by New York's Division of Criminal Justice Services. This focus on regular re-evaluation and background checks aim to ensure that permit holders continue to meet the criteria for responsible firearm ownership. Recognizing the importance of safe firearm storage, the legislation requires guns to be securely stored at home if a person under 18 resides there. This provision underscores the responsibility of firearm owners to prevent unauthorized access, particularly in households with minors. Furthermore, the legislation redefines body vests to encompass a broader range of bullet-resistant protective equipment, including hard body armor. This expansion reflects New York's commitment to adapting its laws to emerging firearm technologies and threats.
Crime for someone who's already been convicted of a felony to possess any firearm.
Implemented by states, my administration is going to focus on how they administer it and whether or not they violate other laws.
To bolster the robustness of firearm regulation, New York's response involves the state taking the lead in conducting background checks that encompass both state and local records, in addition to the FBI's National Instant Criminal Background Check System. This comprehensive approach to background checks underscores the state's dedication to thorough vetting of applicants. Moreover, the legislation introduces background checks for the sale of ammunition, adding an extra layer of accountability to the ammunition purchasing process. New York's response to the Bruen decision is a testament to the state's commitment to public safety while respecting individual Second Amendment rights. The comprehensive legislative package seeks to strike a balance between these considerations, acknowledging the evolving landscape of firearm ownership and its implications for the well-being of New York's residents. As the nation continues to grapple with the broader implications of the Bruen decision, New York's response stands as a notable example of a proactive approach to firearm regulation that prioritizes the safety and security of its citizens. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.